Hey Algebra 2, Ms. Fiorello here. We are going to go through the lesson on how to say what the domain and range is of a graph. So you can pause this video and complete number 1. So you should be back. So it says state the domain and range of the following relation. So we talked about how the domain is our x values. So our domain is our x's, and then our range is our y's. So when you're stating the domain and range, all you have to do is state the x's and the y's in curly brackets because we're listing them. And I'm going to put them in numerical order. So -3, 1, 3, and 4. And then my range, let's see if we can see this color. My smallest y value is -4, then -3, then 2, then 5. Okay, and now I'm deciding, is it a function? Does every input only get one output? You can also answer that question by looking for repeated x's. No x's repeat, we're good there. This is a function, so yes. Now let's state the domain and range of the relation graphed here. So I'm going to go ahead and label these points. I'll just make it easier instead of keeping track in my head. So this is -2, 3. Let's see, point B here is 3, 2. D is 3, -1. C is 1, -1. And I also have point E down here, which is -2, -4. Okay, so my domain, I'm going to take all the x's. So that's the first value in the coordinates. So in this case, that's -2. Oh, I have 2 coordinates with a -2. So I'm only going to write it once. 1, and I have 2 coordinates with a 3. So I'm only going to write the 3 once. And then my range, let's go darker green this time. My y value. So I have a y value of -4. A y value of -1. Oh, I have that twice. So I'm only going to write it once. A y value of 2 and a y value of 3. So that's my range. Your range is your list of y values. Just naming what are the y values that were used on this graph. Is this one a function? Hopefully you put no. The single input of -2 has 2 different outputs. It goes to 3. It also goes to -4. 3 also makes it fail the vertical line test. So it fails the vertical line test here, where a vertical line is touching more than one point. And then here, it fails here as well, touching more than one point, because the input of 3 has more than one output. Okay, so that's how you write the domain and range if it's just like a finite set of points, just a bunch of separate points. It's just a bunch of separate points. And graphs aren't always like that. Sometimes there are these continuous lines or curves. So I can't possibly name every single point on this graph. How could I name every single x that's used in all these points and every single y used in all those points? It's not possible because there are infinite points. So I can't just list like, okay, you have an x value of 2, and you have an x value of 0, and you have an x value of 5, and at this open circle it's 7. I just can't do that because there's infinite points in between. But if I'm going to name some points like -2, -1's on there, 0, 1's on there, 5, 6, and 7, the y value is 4. So I have x's and y's. The smallest x value is going to come from the leftmost point. So I'm going to make that as a note. The leftmost point. And then the largest x value is going to come from the rightmost point, this 7. So I have x values from -2 all the way to 7. So my domain, my x's all occur between an x value of -2 to 7. They're all in between there. Any point you could name has an x value somewhere between -2 to 7. There's no x value that's an 8. There's no x value that's a -3. So it's all between there from -2 to 7. So I'm giving an interval. The smallest y value, so smallest y value is going to come from your lowest point. So your most bottom point, your like lowest point. So that's -1. And my largest y value is going to come from my highest point, this 6. There's no y value you could name on any coordinate that has a value greater than 6. So all my y values are happening somewhere between -1 to 6. They all occur between -1 and 6. There's somewhere in between there. Now, in order to distinguish between these like open circles and closed circles, there are inclusive and exclusive symbols we're going to use. So inclusive symbols are things like closed circles or less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. And when we talk about intervals, we're going to use brackets. So -2 was included. It was a closed circle, so it gets a bracket. 7, however, like -2 is at a closed circle. 7's an open circle, which means we get close and close and close to it, but we don't actually touch it. So 7's not included. So instead of a bracket, it's going to get a parenthesis. Parentheses are exclusive symbols, like open circles, like less than signs, like greater than signs, meaning up to that point but not including it. Now my range is going to get brackets because -1 is indeed a y value. It's from a closed circle. And 6 is a y value from a closed circle. So that's going to get brackets. Okay, I'm going to pause the video here and then make a separate video with the examples.